If you like to talk about combat sports and you want to join the discussion, click the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon next to it and join. What's going on, knuckleheads? This is the Fighters Rep. Thank you so much for joining the Fighters Rep video podcast. Again, I'm your host, the Fighters Rep, and in today's episode, I wanted to touch on something that's really, permeated and become its own sort of pandemic, and that is the racism and bias and bigotry that we're seeing on these YouTube boxing channels more than anywhere else. And it's unfortunate, but I wanted to let you guys know that there is an alternative to these whack job, nut job, racist, biased YouTube boxing channels, and that alternative is right here. Hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it, and be a part and join Knucklehead Nation, because I'm not sure if you guys have been scouring YouTube or have gone into any of these boxing forums on the other YouTube channels where they discuss boxing, but from the ones that I've seen, the great majority of them are pushing some sort of weird, racist, or other biased agenda that just harms the sport, and that's not something we can afford in the sport of boxing particularly, because the sport of boxing is already notorious for the way it treats its fans. And so when people go online to discuss boxing, the last thing I think a lot of them want to see is, this BS race baiting and excuse making and this other craziness and bias that we're seeing from these YouTube channels, and I'll give you guys an example. Right now we have a collective of, for lack of a better word, what I believe to be racists and people that are biased against Tyson Fury in order to sort of expose him for the gloves that he wore. And, there's not a lot of evidence other than the video of his glove flapping a little bit in order for people to be basing these accusations. And we're talking about accusations, that if taken seriously enough could lead to this guy's career being ruined, his children not eating. I mean, there's some real consequences to these sociopaths that are on YouTube, pushing these bullshit narratives, and at the end of the day, one of the things that's ruined modern day media and kind of put out this entire fake news sort of sentiment is the fact that these media outlets, and obviously not just the ones on YouTube, but the ones on mainstream news channels, are so biased, and people are so sick and tired of it that, I think it's time for us to go in a new direction, and that's to be an objective, non-biased information source, and I think that's what fight fans and people seeking news are in need of right now more than anything else. And, the integrity of not only these channels, but of the people that work on these channels gets called into question when they are, coming up with these BS narratives. And again, it hurts the sport. Just think about it. I'll give you an example of how it hurts the sport. So let's say Tyson Fury did not cheat. Let's say his gloves were not tampered with, or he didn't pull his glove half out, and he was actually fighting and throwing jabs, flicking them with the open hand, the way, famous fighters like Larry Holmes, who's known to have the best jab in the history of boxing, basically. Let's say that, he's emulating that instead of doing what these people are saying he's doing, which is cheating. So now casuals who are watching the sport and hearing that he's cheating get turned off by the sport. This turns people off to the sport. And, most people believe what they hear, especially on TV or on the internet. And, you're basically driving away would-be boxing fans. You're driving away revenue. And when you drive away revenue, you drive away the ability for promoters to pay the fighters and make a living for themselves and for their families. So it's extremely destructive extremely destructive and irresponsible when these YouTube channels are coming out with these conspiracy theories. Now, that's not to say that there isn't racism in combat sports altogether, and in boxing especially, because there absolutely is. But at some point, you have to develop the ability to recognize what is and is not racist, as opposed to what these YouTube channels are doing, which is basically finding every single thing wrong with boxing and tying it into a racial issue and making it, just extremely negative and pessimistic for all the people that are not only into boxing but trying to get into boxing. And, another place where you can see that is when you talk to people who haven't watched boxing in a long time, they feel like the sport is dead. They continue to feel like the sport is dead, and that's absolutely not the case. I mean, now more than ever, guys are making the biggest paydays that they've ever made in the entirety of their career. So this sport didn't go anywhere. This sport is not dead. This sport is probably the biggest it's ever been. However, the sport has, in my opinion, experienced a growing pain, a stunt in its growth, especially since the 90s, I would say, because of a combination of, and I'll point out the problems for you guys again, a combination of guys trying to protect their fighters, preserving that undefeated record, these A-side versus B-side fights, which facilitate that and prevent fight fans from getting the fights that they deserve and that they want, and the lack of investment into the sport, which is also related to those two things I've just mentioned. I mean, I believe it was Dana White that said every boxing promotion for every event is basically a going out of business sale. They just try to make as much money as possible for that event. They're not really thinking about future events. They're not really investing into the fighters and into the storylines the way they should. And, they could learn a lot from a guy like Dana White, and they can learn a lot from the UFC when it comes to marketing fighters. Now, I'm not saying the UFC is perfect, but when it comes to investing in the sport and marketing fighters, I do believe that the UFC at this point has surpassed boxing in every way, shape, or form when it comes to letting fans be behind the scenes and getting to know their fighters. And also when it comes to selling fights and selling their brand. They do put their brand first, which I think is extremely important, but they're also pushing the fighters, doing a great job of doing that. And, again, back to my point, though, besides the fact that boxing continues down this path of, preserving the O's and A-side versus B-side fights and trying to basically fool the public in the process of creating champions and fighters and personalities, and, the public is not falling for it, for your information. But besides doing that, now they've got these boxing media news outlets independent on YouTube that are not only calling them out for their corruption, but are battling, or in their minds battling, the corruption with another form of corruption. And since when does one form of corruption replacing another form of corruption result in any sort of success for the people that are actually trying to thrive from whatever organization it is? I mean, you can't call out boxing's corruption through your own lens of racist and biased corruption. You just can't do that. And so, again, I go back to the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder example. I mean, let's take a look objectively at what happened here, right? We have a guy in Tyson Fury who is a boxing historian by all intents and purposes, based on not only his own self-proclamations, but based on the fact that, when you sit down and listen to him in an interview, he knows what he's talking about, and he's got the skills of someone who's, kind of looked back at the history of boxing and adapted and adopted many of the things that made guys successful in boxing. And one of those is the jab from Larry Holmes, right? which was to do it with your hand open and kind of whip the jab. And that's why he kind of throws that almost like a backhanded jab, and I know, hitting someone with the back of the fist is supposed to be illegal, but I think by the time he's connecting, whipping that hand, it's the front of the fist that's landing, and that's why he's not getting called out on it. So that being said, objectively speaking, we have a guy who's engaged in an activity that one of the greatest heavyweights in history with the greatest jab in history has already engaged in. So instead of looking at it for what it is and understanding the history of boxing, these YouTube channels are ignoring that. Additionally, these YouTube channels are ignoring the fact that this guy won the first fight and got ripped off. I mean, this guy clearly won the first fight and got ripped off. You have to be a complete tool of the boxing establishment or a complete racist, biased idiot to think that Deontay Wilder won that first fight. I cannot make an argument at all, despite having an affinity for Wilder as an American boxing fan. I cannot make the argument that he won that first fight. It was a fun fight to watch, but did he win that first fight? I didn't see it. Anyway, opinions will differ on that, but let's move on to the next thing. Tyson Fury flew to the United States to take that fight, that first one, and he did it again for the second fight. So we're talking about now a guy who's completely left his comfort zone for the umpteenth time, because let's not forget, he fought Vladimir Klitschko in Germany and somehow pulled off a unanimous decision. I mean, to go into Germany against a hometown fighter as an outside and pull a unanimous decision is nothing short of miraculous. So this guy, instead of being admired for leaving his country, coming all the way out here to the United States, right? And fighting Deontay Wilder, a protected fighter who's fought absolutely nobody twice in his own backyard, instead of looking at that and admiring what he did there, we actually have these people, and I'm talking guys with hundreds of thousands of views at this point on their ridiculously biased and racist YouTube channels, making the argument that this guy cheated. Again, the guy who left his comfort zone for the umpteenth time, came to the United States twice, got ripped off on his first decision, and stopped Deontay Wilder. Whether his glove was halfway in the glove, whether his hand was halfway in the glove or all the way in. If you think your hand being halfway in the glove helped him win that fight and stop Deontay Wilder, you're absolutely ridiculous, okay? So again, the guy left his country, came here, stopped Deontay Wilder in the second fight, and we're criticizing the guy, and we're calling this guy out? Why not, serve the boxing public objectively and do what's best for not only Tyson Fury, but also for Deontay Wilder, in pointing out the fact that Deontay Wilder lost that fight because of an inferior technique in boxing. That's what happened. The guy has been known, and it's been said time and time again that Deontay Wilder's boxing skills are subpar, that he's been getting through the sport with a big right hand and a semi-exciting personality. And time again, we said it on this channel that we didn't like to bet on Deontay Wilder because that bet entails trusting that he's going to be able to pull himself out of the hole, with that big right hand in almost every single fight when he gets behind on the scorecards. And I even mentioned in the past on this channel, and this is objectively speaking, my friends of Knucklehead Nation, Deontay Wilder was losing to Artur Szpilka on an objective scorecard. I don't know what the judges had it. I think they had it split at the time Wilder, evaporated and eviscerated Szpilka with the big right hand in that fight. But as an objective boxing observer, Deontay Wilder was getting schooled by an Artur Szpilka. Listen to what I'm saying here. And in his last fight, before the Tyson Fury fight against Luis Ortiz, he was losing every single round of that fight. And so in order to be confident in picking Deontay Wilder versus any other fighter on this planet, right? You not only have to be uneducated and biased, but you have to believe that at some point that right hand is going to land and pull him out of the hole, because you cannot have the confidence that this guy's going to be ahead on the scorecards. And my goodness, guys, I have nothing but the utmost respect for El Gallo Negro, Gerald Washington. But even in that fight, Gallo Negro was doing enough, in my opinion, to be winning that fight before getting stopped. I believe it was in the 5th round. These are guys that are not top-level boxing technicians. And so I said to myself, how is a guy like Deontay Wilder going to beat Tyson Fury? Mind you, I was one of the few people on earth that predicted Tyson Fury to beat Vladimir Klitschko when he did. Okay, and that's a completely objective, non-biased position to take. And I'll say this too. I felt like Tyson Fury mentally may not have been in it ahead of the rematch against Deontay Wilder. And for a time, I was picking Wilder to win the rematch because I know Wilder's more focused on boxing. And I felt like Tyson Fury making all of these sort of hints at going to MMA and becoming a wrestler, I felt like that was an indication that perhaps he was losing focus on boxing. But then when he joined Sugar Hill Stewart and started coming out in these interviews, and I saw the confidence with which he was carrying himself, I said to myself, you know what? I think this guy wins the fight against Deontay Wilder. And the bottom line is, and this is the bottom line, this is, for all the people out there that have been run out of these racist boxing forums, this is for those ridiculously racist boxing forums. This is for everybody. And for those of you who have been run out of there and haven't been here or been able to express yourself without basically getting kicked out of these forums, which is what they do when you express a difference of opinion. For all of you that have done that, you can get your fix right here. Hit that subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it. And I'll give you more details on what you get out of subscribing and joining Knucklehead Nation. But this is a point I wanted to make to all those ridiculous channels, to everybody that enjoys and understands boxing, and even those that don't understand boxing. At the end of the day, an objective journalist or podcaster or what have you, in the realm of boxing or any combat sport, in my opinion, especially in boxing, is going to go, in his predictions or in her predictions, is going to go with the fighter with the most skill, the most technical skill, unless there's some sort of intangible in the opponent that's just something that nobody can overcome. And so in my opinion, that is why I went with Tyson Fury. And that is why if anybody were to fight Floyd Mayweather in his prime, Floyd Mayweather Jr., I would go with Floyd Mayweather Jr. And that is why if anybody in his weight class, and now I'm talking about Lomachenko, if anybody in Lomachenko's weight class was to fight him, I'm going to go with Lomachenko. And that's why if anybody in Terrence Bud Crawford's weight class were to fight him, I'm going to go with Terrence Bud Crawford. You got to go with the guy with the best boxing technique, because at the end of the day, this is not even a fight. This is boxing. And the guy with the best boxing technique is going to win the boxing match. And in some instances, it will turn into a fight. But then you got to go with the guy with the best technique in that realm, in that universe of a fight. Which one of them is a better fighter if this turns into a fight or a dog fight? So, my point is, if you're going to be objective, okay, you got to go with the guy with the best boxing skills. And it wasn't Tyson Fury's glove being half out that allowed him to win the fight. In fact, I challenge anybody to go up to a heavy bag or to spar with somebody with their glove half out. Let's see how you do. Let's see how you do, especially a guy that hits as hard as Deontay Wilder. It's not about that, though. The winner of a boxing match is typically going to be the guy with the best boxing technique. That's who's going to be the winner, knuckleheads. Okay? So before I go to the chat, because a lot of people are in the chat saying stuff, and thank you guys for joining me on this chat and for joining Knucklehead Nation. Before I go into that, I'm going to tell you what you get out of subscribing below and hitting the bell notification icon. By the way, comment, share, like, do everything people on good people on YouTube do to help us grow this channel. But besides getting a non-biased perspective that respects your opinion, okay, I may not agree. I will 100% not agree with a lot of the opinions that come on here. But you're going to get a non-biased, respectful person that's going to hear you out and give you the chance to be heard. Okay? Whether you agree with me or not, I'm an adult. I can handle people disagreeing with me. It happens all the time in my household and everywhere else. But besides getting that, right, which is already, I believe, superior to 99% of these other boxing channels on YouTube. And I said 99% of them because not all of them are racist and bigoted, but it's the majority. But besides that, you're also contributing by joining this channel, by donating to this channel, by getting your Fighters Rep gear in the link below. You're also contributing to the growth and the development of the only pro kickboxing promotion in the state of California. If I'm being honest, even on the amateur level, I believe we're the only promotion exclusively using unified rules kickboxing. And that's a big deal because if you don't know, California, especially here in Southern California, but California as a whole is the mecca of combat sports. If you've heard of camps like Black House, if you've heard of camps like Saxon Muay Thai, Sit Yaw Tong, CMMA, Systems Training Center, all these big-time camps that are putting out fighters into the UFC and Bellator and these other big-time promotions, they're all right here, and they're all sending fighters to develop on Fighters Rep shows. And I want to proudly say that, in our last event, we actually had a kid from King's MMA, which is where Kelvin Gaslam trains. Rafael Cordero's the head coach there. Benil Dariush trains there. Countless guys trained there. And Kelvin Gaslam is the guy that gave Israel Adesanya his toughest fight. So that's why I brought up Israel Adesanya when I thought of King's MMA. So we had a kid from King's MMA fight for a title against a kid from Systems Training Center in Gabe Silva, who is Anderson Silva's son. So that's the kind of talent that you guys are helping me to develop, not only by subscribing and donating and buying stuff from this channel, but by participating on this channel. Not only that, I'm giving you guys free fights. And this is the most action-packed rule set, in my opinion, in combat sports. Of course, that's a matter of opinion, but I ask you, take my opinion for a test drive. Right here on this channel, we air every single fight. We not only live stream all of our fights from the Fighters Rep shows, of which there have been 9 already, but then we individually upload each fight. And I ask you to test drive and take the challenge and watch some of the fights. And I promise you, you will rarely be as entertained as you are with our fights. And I believe not only is that the case because we're able to match some of the best young talent in the world right here in California, because we're the hub of combat sports here. We're the mecca. But also, because of our rule set. We're the only promotion that exclusively uses the IKF Unified Rules rule set. We don't use any other rule set, and that means they got to stand and bang. There's no grappling allowed. The only clinching allowed is with one hand to set up one knee, and then you got to let go. These guys got to stand and bang it out. There's no holding. There's no catching of the legs. These guys got to stand and bang it out. And again, I implore you guys to take a look at these fights we've got on this channel. And I promise you, you will not see too many fights with this much action. So let's take a look at the chat because I'm getting ahead of myself here. So we have Jorge Estiels. Thank you so much for joining. He said hello back to you. Our brother Calculated Risk is on here. He says, "What's up, George? The glove excuse is ridiculous. To be honest, the fans making us hate on boxers, especially when they're being biased. That's why I'm sick of modern day boxing. I'm becoming a fan of MMA. UFC, they making the best fight the best. Khabib, Ferguson, Usman, Covington. And that's what happens when you have the best fighting the best, unlike boxing, when you have A-side versus B-side fights. And it's also what happens when you don't have a collective of YouTube media members that are trying to destroy the reputations of fighters and promoters and other media members and fans and shitting on fans and people that disagree with them. You know, the level of immaturity and narcissism, the level of sociopathy that's cutting through and underlying these YouTube channels is just absolutely ridiculous. And they have herds upon herds of these fucking sheep that follow them. And it's absolutely sad, the state of boxing fandom. Jorge Estiel says Tyson Fury is the closest boxer to Ali. Perhaps at this point, right now he is. Calculated Risk says boxing is becoming much more racial favorite. I'm sick of it, says Calculated Risk. Wilder lost the first fight clearly. I mean, I don't think there's much of an argument there, you know. Ricky Torres says, I get to laugh about all the controversies that come up after Tyson won. And shit, I'm not from the UK here. You know what I mean? I'm not from the UK, you know, but I agree. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. You know what I mean? Calculated Risk says, Wilder ducking AJ for unification before AJ got knocked out by Andy Ruiz. Eddie Hearn offered him $120 million, but Wilder denied it. You know, I don't even have a comment about Wilder and AJ. A lot of people still think that Wilder did the right thing by taking Tyson Fury instead of the AJ fight. I actually think Wilder is a much better shot at beating AJ than he does against a technical boxer like Tyson Fury. But that's my opinion. Storm Photography says it's really sad that people are pushing a racial agenda. People on both sides as well. Right-wing religious wingnuts and black supremacy channels. It's abysmal. Absolutely couldn't agree more with that. Calculated Risk says, seriously, people, making sport racist. I'm a huge Roman Gonzalez fan, but when he lost to Rungvisai, I just admitted it and moved on. Never looking for glove excuses or steroid excuses. Calculated Risk says Wilder can't fight on the back foot. Exactly, and why not just put that out there? Why not just say this guy lacks the skill set necessary to beat a guy like Tyson Fury? Instead, they do everyone, including Deontay Wilder, disservice by telling him, oh, champ, rely on your other excuses, champ. Instead of pushing Deontay Wilder to take a look and be introspective at his own training regimen and maybe make a few changes that may allow him to come back and win the fight, these guys are out here coming up with every excuse they can in the book, and that's not going to help anybody, especially Deontay Wilder if he buys into that. Jorge Estiel says he was losing to Ortiz too. I agree. Calculated Risk says when you say 1 + 1 = 2, Wilder fans would say it's not 2, it's 11. Jorge Estiel. Calculated Risk also says delusional fans, man, they never accept defeat, always looking for lame excuses. Oh, my goodness. Calculated Risk says, I heard one of Wilder's fans wrote the letter to NSAC to investigate Fury's glove. What a stupid sore loser fan. Real talk, dog. It's crazy. Storm Photography says the Mayweather channel are pushing the agenda at the minute on the glove conspiracy. Lately on with Dewey Cooper is terrible. If no one has seen it, I'd advise you to, man. A man claiming to be a 30-year vet of the sport is spewing laughable nonsense. Naturally, the comments are switched off. I watch a lot of One Championship, zero drama, and they all respect each other. You know, I haven't caught a lot of One Championship. I see a lot of their stuff on Facebook and stuff like that. And what I do see looks pretty cool. But yeah, you know, the Asian community especially in the fight game tends to be more respectful of fighters. You know, they're able to kind of set aside their bias, unlike a lot of us in the West do. And that's why I appreciate what they've got going on there. I remember a lot of times, I remember, for example, Rampage Jackson saying how much he enjoyed fighting in Japan. I believe I've heard Josh Barnett say the same thing. It's because they're so respectful of their, of their fighters. And I believe that's the way we should be too. And if I'm being honest, I feel like in the UK, they're very respectful of their fighters, at least a lot more so than we are here in the United States. And I actually did a video of that not too long ago. I can definitely see eye to eye more so with fans in Asia and with fans in the UK than I can with a lot of the American boxing fans. And, I don't know if it's because I'm a first generation American. I don't know, if my parents are from an old culture, if that's why, but I just don't seem to be able to get on board with this, going for somebody because of the way they look or where they're from or what promoter they're riding with. It doesn't work for me. My eyes don't deceive me that often. And I'm going to go with what I'm looking at objectively with my eyes. And if I see one guy is better than the other guy, then that's what I'm going to say. And if I think a guy has a shortcoming that's not allowing him to beat another guy, then that's what I'm going to say, And I hope you guys can respect that enough and like that enough in order to continue to join us on this channel and help me build, again, the only unified rules kickboxing promotion in the world or in California. And to all of those who have helped me, I want to say thank you. I really want to say thank you. I mean, we've actually had a good bit of donations to this channel. We've actually had a lot of contribution from you guys to this channel. And just know that basically every penny you guys have ever donated to this channel has been reinvested right back into the promotion. And it's worked. At our last event on February 28th, I believe it was the 28th, it was a Friday night, we had a sellout crowd. And to sell out in Southern California for a kickboxing event and to get over 24,000 views so far on the live stream, you can actually go back on this channel and look at the live stream. It's at over 24,000 views. To do that is a big fucking deal. And you guys had a lot to do with that. I invested every single penny you guys spent on this channel right back into the promotion. We paid the fighters' purses. We paid everything through that, not only through some of the money that you guys gave us, but obviously through a lot of the money that we collected from the fight fans that showed up that night. But we had a sellout crowd. So I want to thank you guys again and encourage you guys to continue to join us. Anything you guys want me to talk about in the future, also let me know. I'm happy to discuss anything you guys want to discuss. At the end of the day, it's all about what you guys want that kind of will direct this channel. Of course, it's what I want as well, but it's a combination of what you guys want to hear about and what I feel like discussing. And the kickboxing portion of it will never stop. Let's see here. So yeah, Dewey Cooper, 30-year vet of the sport. I mean, I haven't heard what he has to say, but if he's in agreement with Glovegate, that's kind of strange to me. I'm not saying that it's impossible that Tyson Fury did something, but what I'm saying is in the United States, even our forefathers in this country knew that you're innocent until proven guilty. And if you want to be guilty until proven innocent, you should probably look into, moving to another country or being a part of another culture that will ridicule you and shit on you and treat you as guilty until you're proven innocent. That's the difference between us and others. And, Tyson Fury, in my eyes, again, is innocent until proven guilty. I think it's extremely convenient that this farmer is coming out immediately after this Glovegate thing and immediately after the fact that Tyson Fury beats Deontay Wilder 5 years later. The guy waited 5 years to come out. Why'd he wait 5 years? He didn't get his money that he was allegedly bribed to get, and he wants to come out 5 years later after the guy wins the title. Extremely convenient timing, you guys. And I'm not going to say that Tyson Fury didn't do it, but I don't have enough evidence right now to say he didn't. I don't have enough evidence to say he cheated with steroids. I don't have enough evidence to say that his glove was half out, which would be the stupidest thing you can do as a fighter. I spar and I work out a couple times a week. Of course, right now with this fucking pandemic, I can't do anything. But I typically spar, or work out a couple times a week in Los Angeles. And I would never in my wildest dreams put a boxing glove or one of my gloves that I spar with half on, because it would result in me getting my ass kicked. And I just don't get it. I just don't get how people can see that that's an advantage. Also, I believe if your glove was half off and you were to slap or throw a hook, you'd actually be landing with this part of your knuckles, because there's no way you'd have enough room to turn your hand in the wrist portion of the glove and land with these knuckles. You'd actually be landing with these. I mean, think about how much it hurts if you knock on a door hard enough with these knuckles here. Now think about if you're throwing a hook at somebody's skull with these knuckles here. What's it going to feel like? You know what I mean? It's kind of silly. And I'm not saying that it's impossible, but if your hand being halfway out of the glove was the reason you won the fight, then in my opinion, you fucking still deserved to win the fight, because that's a tough way to win a fight. Let me tell you. So let me see here. Calculated Risk says, what about protest on Wilder got extra recovery time between rounds 7 and 8 when Wilder got rocked by Grandpa Luis Ortiz? That's true. Calculated Risk says, I respect ONE FC president, man. Sit Yao Tong put a lot of investment in the company. Storm Photography says, yeah, man, it's decent. Female Muay Thai is awesome. Better than the men's in a lot of cases. Jorge SDL says, can you name your top 5 heavyweights? Wow, yeah, I mean, let's see what we got here. If UFC striker fans go to Thailand to watch Muay Thai, they forget UFC striker stars. So Calculated Risk is here, naming his top 5 heavyweights. He says Fury, AJ, Wilder, Ruiz, Usyk. I would agree with that list. I would replace Andy Ruiz with Dillian White. I would replace Andy Ruiz with Dillian White. I don't think Andy Ruiz, even though he has the potential to be there, I don't think he has what it takes discipline-wise anymore to get to that level. Of course, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Calculated Risk says, but I want to see how Usyk does against Derek Chisora first. Calculated Risk says, I gained like 5 pounds since this corona quarantine. Well, be healthy, brother. Do some shadow boxing. Do some push-ups. Do everything you got to do to stay in shape, my man. Storm Photography says, I don't doubt the farmer story is true. However, he was told to go to UCAD and instead went to one of our most hideous rag newspapers for the sensationalism. He's something of a moron. There you go. Calculated Risk, no working. Put no 5 miles running. All I do is eating. Well, Calculated Risk, we can't continue to do that, brother. But anyway, knuckleheads, I appreciate you guys joining me for this chat. I'm going to log out now. Excuse me, I'm going to log out now. But, I will probably see you guys again tomorrow. As you know, we do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Now that we're in quarantine, we may be coming on more often, just coming up with, all sorts of, different topics just to keep us all entertained. And maybe we'll do the next one on our 5 favorite heavyweights or the 5 best heavyweights at the time right now. By the way, knuckleheads, thank you again for joining me. Hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon if you haven't already. Stay safe, stay indoors, and keep it clean, knuckleheads. I'll see you guys tomorrow.